On the outskirts of the small town of Willow Creek, there lay an old, forgotten cemetery. It was a place where the shadows seemed to dance and the whispers of the past lingered in the cool night air. The cemetery, surrounded by an ancient wrought iron fence, had long been abandoned. The children of the town had always been warned to stay away, but curiosity often got the better of them. One chilly autumn evening, three friends, Tommy, Sarah, and Jack, decided to explore the cemetery. They had heard many ghost stories about it and wanted to see if the tales were true. Armed with only a flashlight and their daring spirits, they made their way through the rusted iron gates. The full moon cast eerie shadows over the weathered tombstones, and the wind howled through the trees, making the children shiver. As they ventured deeper into the cemetery, they stumbled upon an ancient mausoleum. The structure was covered in ivy and looked as if it had not been touched in centuries. The door creaked open with a haunting groan, revealing a dark and musty interior. Driven by a mixture of fear and excitement, they stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and cobwebs clung to the walls like ghostly shrouds. Inside, they found an old, dusty journal lying on a stone altar. Sarah picked it up, her hands trembling. The journal belonged to a young girl named Emily, who had lived over a century ago. It told the story of how Emily and her friends had disappeared one night, never to be seen again. The final entry spoke of a shadowy figure that whispered to them, promising eternal friendship in exchange for their souls. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a chilling whisper filled the air. "Come play with us," it said. The children froze in terror, their breaths visible in the frigid air. Tommy shone the flashlight around, and to their horror, they saw shadowy figures emerging from the darkness, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The children turned to run, but the shadows were faster. They could hear the whispers growing louder. "Stay with us forever." Panic set in as they stumbled and fell, the shadows closing in around them. Just when all hope seemed lost, a blinding light filled the mausoleum, and the shadows recoiled. An old caretaker stood at the entrance holding a lantern. His face was stern but kind. "You must leave this place," he said sternly. "The spirits here are restless and hungry for company." The children didn't need to be told twice. They bolted out of the cemetery, vowing never to return. As they reached the safety of their homes, they realized the caretaker had vanished without a trace. They later learned that the cemetery had been abandoned for years, and no one had seen a caretaker there in decades. The children never spoke of that night again, but the memory of the whispering shadows haunted them for the rest of their lives. Years later, Tommy, Sarah, and Jack had grown up and moved away from Willow Creek. The memory of that night in the cemetery remained a ghostly echo in their minds. They tried to forget, but the shadows of the past were not so easily dismissed. Tommy became a writer, often incorporating elements of that eerie night into his stories. He hoped that by sharing his experiences, he could finally rid himself of the nightmares. Sarah pursued a career in psychology, driven by a desire to understand the fear that had gripped them all. Jack, on the other hand, became a historian, dedicating his life to uncovering the secrets of the past. One day, Sarah received a letter from Jack. He had discovered something remarkable. Hidden in the town's archives was another journal, one that belonged to the old caretaker. It detailed his attempts to protect the town from the restless spirits of the cemetery. The caretaker had been a guardian, using his knowledge of ancient rituals to keep the spirits at bay. Intrigued, Sarah shared the letter with Tommy. They decided to return to Willow Creek and meet with Jack. Together, they planned to visit the cemetery one last time, hoping to uncover the truth and finally lay the spirits to rest. The journey back to Willow Creek was filled with a sense of foreboding. The town had changed over the years, but the cemetery remained the same, silent, eerie, and untouched by time. As they approached the rusted iron gates, memories of that fateful night came flooding back. They entered the cemetery cautiously, their steps echoing in the stillness. The moonlight illuminated the weathered tombstones, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. They made their way to the ancient mausoleum, the place where it had all begun. Inside, The air was thick with the scent of decay, just as it had been all those years ago. They found the stone altar, now covered in more dust and cobwebs. Sarah placed the old caretaker's journal next to Emily's, a symbolic gesture to unite the past with the present. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and the familiar chilling whisper filled the air. "Come play with us," it said. But this time, the friends were prepared. They recited the ancient rituals described in the caretaker's journal, their voices steady and strong. A blinding light filled the mausoleum once again, and the shadows recoiled. But this time, the light did not fade. It grew brighter and brighter until the shadows were no more. The spirits had been laid to rest, their whispers silenced forever. As the friends left the cemetery, they felt a sense of peace. The shadows of the past had finally been dispelled, and the town of Willow Creek could rest easy once more. Tommy, Sarah, and Jack had faced their fears and emerged stronger, their bond unbroken by time or distance. The whispering shadows were no more, and the cemetery, once a place of fear and darkness, was now a symbol of their courage and friendship. The story of that night would be passed down through generations, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, light and hope can prevail.